I'm betting a bunch of you are at the point now in your apps where you want to have some data in your application, and maybe editing things inside of Rails console is boring, or you're afraid you'll have to redo it every time you change something, or you like to keep a history of what you did. Let's talk about two different ways we can create some data, and then I'm going to show you a Rails gem that is really handy for creating some random fake data. So, in your DB folder is a file called seeds.rb. This file exists, so it says at the top, should contain all the record creation needed to seed the database with its default values. So you could imagine if your app had some data that it needed, like maybe your app has a list of categories in it that goes into a categories table, right? Take your example, for instance, Kenny. You've got breweries and dive bars as the kind of bars you could create. But what if there were breweries, dive bars, and holes in the walls, and and restaurants, right? Maybe that list of things would be a categories table. And as you added new types of things, you want to be able to add to those. That's the kind of thing that normally would go in a seeds file, right? It's data that your application needs when it starts that exists in the database. We can also use this to create dummy data for our app. So for instance, if we look at our schema, right? We went in and created some company records for our taco database. And in the database, it looks something like, hey, let's make an SDG company create, and the name was SDG tacos. These are the same commands we would have typed in Rails console. We're just saving them in the seeds file. And the location is 2220 Central at St. Petersburg, the entire thing, because reasons. And the year founded 2017, right? So we can create anything we want in here, and then we can take the SDG company and create a location. I think this has a location. No, this location has an address. 2200 Central at St. Petersburg, Florida, 33712. And hours are 24 hours. And the rating is 5. Right? And we can keep doing this with more, right? We could do casita equals company.create, a whole bunch of things, right? And we can create as much of these as we want, right? Just a whole file of commands. And when it's time to run them, let's make this a little bigger. The way we run the seed files is Rails db:/seed. And what this does is it loads up our Rails application, and it runs that seed file. And I made a mistake. This is probably also address. Right? This will run through that seed file. And if it says nothing, then all those locations were created. Companies and locations were created. Right? So if I want to zero out my database and then put my fake data back in, Rails DB schema load will remove all my tables and their data and recreate all my tables empty. So at this point, my database is zapped. Right? No tables, no data. Right? Company count is 0. But if I Rails DB seed, now if I go into console, my company count is 1. Right? Because this one company is now in my database, right? So the seeds file is really handy because it exists and it's already hooked up and it's really easy to use. But realistically, Most developers keep this for really seed data, not for generating like sample data. And there's a difference between seed data and sample data, right? The seed data are things that every time we deploy our application, we need that data to exist. Things like a list of all the categories we support. Where sample data really should just be like data I need in development mode to kind of play around. So if you feel like using the seeds file, that's fine. It's really easy. There's nothing new to do. You just type some code in it and run RailsDB seed. But the way we really should do this is by creating what we call a task. So we've been doing RailsDB migrate and RailsDB seed and such. These are custom tasks that Rails knows how to do. But we can generate our own for our own purposes, right? One of the things that we can generate is a task. So maybe we generate a task called sample data. What this is going to do is make a file lib task sample data. Let's go take a look at what that looks like. Lib tasks sample data. All right. And here's our sample data. Oops, I think I wanted to do this differently. I think I needed one more thing. Yes, I want sample data create. Rail generate task sample data create. Perfect, this is what I wanted. Right? So this says this task is in the sample data namespace, kind of like DB, right? DB : migrate. This is the sample data namespace, like we have the DB namespace. If we look at all of the data commands now, sorry, I wanted to say Rails. This is a force of habit. If we say Rails, look, now there's a Rails sample data create, just like there's a DB migrate and a DB seed. This is creating our own tasks into the environment. And here, we can put the same things we have in seeds. Right? The same thing works here, and now we're not kind of reusing that seed file for anything. Right? So this has the same purpose as seeds, but now if we want to do this, we run Rails DB schema load, and then we run Rails sample data :create. It has the same purpose, but it's not kind of reusing that seeds file for a purpose it wasn't really intended for, right? It's more of a convention than a rule. So like I say, if you just want to use the seed file for that, I'm not going to yell at you. What you're going to find is you go on a real project, and that seed file will be limited to just data that the application absolutely needs just to function, and we'll have another script like this task for actually generating fake data. So I'm going to keep using this task. If you want to use the seed file, that's fine. But you'll notice that if I want to create a whole bunch of these company names and addresses, I have to keep coming up with new information. And I'm just not that creative. So there's another gem called Faker. And it gets used a lot for testing when we need to generate lots of fake data, such as names, addresses, and phone numbers. Right? So let's add Faker to our Taco Tuesday. And let's try it out. So once we have Faker installed, we can look at all the different categories of fake data it can do. And it's got a whole pile of things. Addresses, list of artists, list of beers, list of bitcoins, list of cats, Chuck Norris's, dogs, Doctor Who things, right? But it also has things like names. So if we click on Faker name, we can see that it can generate full names, names with initials, first names, middle names, last names, initials. let's see what happens if we come into our console and run faker name. Right, we just get a long list of random names. Right? That might work for us. I think there's also company names. Yeah. Right? Renner, Ruth, and Vinka. Right? This is just generating a whole bunch of fake names. So if I wanted in my generate data, what if I wanted 100 times do fake company is company.create. The name is going to come from faker company name. The address is going to come from where? Let's go see if there's a faker address. Let's see if there's one that's all together. Full address. Faker full address. 282 Kevin Brook, blah, somewhere in California. Right? This is probably not going to be a geocodable address. But if we just need some sample data in our app, there's our address. What else do we need? Year founded. Right? Maybe we just make this a random number. For now, I'm just going to leave it 2017. And I'm not going to do this 100 times. I'm going to do it 8 times. I don't want 100 things in here. Right? And I'm going to get rid of the SDG one. So now I'm going to generate eight fake companies. Let's clear our database. And let's run our sample data create. It's taking a little bit longer because it's trying to geocode all those addresses. Right? Here's our companies. Notice we didn't get any latitudes and longitude because those are not real addresses. But we do get random latitudes and longitudes. Right? Yes, they might be in the middle of the ocean, but they are real locations on the surface of the Earth. So if you just want to generate some boilerplate information into your app, Faker's really good. If you really only need 3 profiles and 4 breweries or 2 albums, you don't need Faker. But if you want to generate a whole bunch, maybe you want to see how does my app work when I have hundreds of people in my database. I don't want to have to come up with 100 names. I'm just going to run Faker. I'm going to do 100 times do, go make a whole bunch of users and use Faker name for the fake names, right? Rather than having to type them all in. If you care how accurate your data is, Faker may not help. But if you just want 100 random names for your companies or your locations, there you go. So that is creating either seed data or a sample data task. Either is fine. Also, how to use Faker to generate fake data. And by the way, it has all kinds of fun categories. Like read through these, find your favorite thing. I'm kind of expecting that there's going to be a Pokemon, right? For those who are generating random Pokemon stuff, right? There we go. Cool. Let's talk about generating things with images in them. So actually, let's undo. Let's go back to where we just had Suncoast Developers Guild. Now, we never added any kind of active storage. So let's add active storage to our Taco Tuesday. And let's give the locations has one attached image.
Is it .install, active storage .install?
Active storage :install. Right. Let's add an image to our location. So now we want there to be an image in here. Fortunately, we can say let's do this. Now let's grab this location as well. So we're going to create that location object, and we can say, hey, location object, your image, let's attach something. So this is like manually uploading an image. Right? Normally we would do this with a form or a scaffold. We won't have any scaffolds in this app. So how do we do this? We have to attach it, and we have to pass it two things, an IO and a file name. Right? Two things. So we can do this two ways. Either we can put in our app somewhere, like maybe in our client public folder or in our app public folder, we can add an image. Right? Like maybe we just download the picture. Suncoast.io. Is there a good picture here we can steal? Is there a picture of us somewhere? Yeah, this one, right? Let's copy this image address, or let's save this image as dev SDG cohort XII week 11 Taco Tuesday public. Let's just save that image here into our Suncoast folder. Okay? So we want that to be the image for this SDG location. So we've got to do a couple things. We've got to give it the entire path to that. We have to put the path here. But we don't really know in this code where our project lives. Fortunately, if we go into Rails console, we can see that the Rails object has a root. And that tells me where my project lives. And if I call join with this, I can say public, what did I call it? Public Suncoast PNG. Aha, that's the path to my image, right? If I look at this file on my hard drive, that should be where that Suncoast PNG is. It's in my SDG cohort 12 week 11 Taco Tuesday public Suncoast. So this is the code I want to put right here. This is the code I want to put right here. And in the file name, we'll just call it suncoast.png. Let me make this a little bit wider so you can see it. Right. We're going to attach this file to this location's image, Suncoast PNG. So now, if we run our schema load and our sample data, Taco Tuesday public. Oh, it's not a JPEG. Sorry, it's PNG. It's a JPEG. Not a PNG. It's a JPEG. Let's try this again. Let's reload it. I thought it was a PNG. Right. So now we've associated this little Suncoast PNG, I keep saying PNG, JPEG, as the image to this location. So now if we go into our locations controller, we can add one more thing to this, which is the image, right? Remember, this is URL for location image. So now we can add this image to our app. If I run Rails server, what we should see now, if we load our localhost 3000 API locations, hey, there's the URL to where that image is, there's the image. So now all I need to do is update my UI to include that as the picture when they click on the image, right? And we can also do the whole thing where we do variants of a certain size, right? All we've done now is be able to have a particular image. But now what if we didn't want to have that image local, we wanted some random images? So I found this awesome site that is placem.at, placemat, and it has random images. So you can use this site to generate random images. So this thing here, I copy that URL. If I ask for people width of some size, and if you do random equals 1, you get some random images. If you leave the width off and just put the random equals 1, you get random pictures of people. So what if I wanted to use those random images rather than like the hard-coded one? What I can do is I can require this library called OpenURI. It's built into Ruby. And then instead of file open, I can say open that URL and get rid of all this other stuff. And now what will happen is, rather than use a file on my hard drive, this open will open up that URL, pull down that image, and feed it to the image. Let's see if that works. So hopefully when we do this, I haven't made any mistakes. Let's run Rails server. And now I should have like a random picture of a person in here in my API. Let's reload this and click on this. Reload this. And click on this. I still have the same image. Let's do this with random, just so we can see if we have the right thing. Schema load. Should be no data in the database. All right. And let's load the sample data. Come on. Why is it still giving me the same file? That's weird.
Because the file name is the same.
Let's see. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to trash the sample, the storage folder. I'm going to remove everything in storage. And then create some sample data. There we go. Maybe it was the file name. Maybe I had to clear out the sample folder, right? So here's a random picture of a person. I wonder if I load the database again and run sample data create. And reload this. I'm getting the same person. I'm going to try and leave the file name off and see what happens. Maybe for the randomness, I need to leave the file name off. Aha, it needs the file name. Let's use Faker. Faker, is there a Faker file name? Faker file. File name. So it looks like we can use Faker here to generate a fake file name. That's awesome. Gotta love Ruby. Let's come back here, reload our sample data. Oh, we didn't get any file name. Why? Oh, because there's a path. We don't want a path in here. We want how do you do it without any path? Foobar. Yeah, but I want just no directory. That stinks. That's less helpful. What else can we use to generate a file name?
Could you just put a backslash there?
Maybe. But I thought like empty. See, it still has that first slash.
Yeah.
I don't want that first slash in there. Let's just do this. Let's just use the first name. And then we're going to add .png on the end. How about that? That'll give us a random thing. Let's create some sample data. There we go. Now, let's reload this. There we go. There's Timothy. It's not quite a person, but okay, cool. All right, let's see if we clear our schema, create some sample data, reload, different picture. Cool. So this is kind of how you would do attach a random image somewhere if you wanted some random images, right? Then you could play around with placemat and get different kinds of images, right? If you just wanted some random images in your app, like random profile pictures or whatever, right? Same kind of thing. So I think this is pretty handy rather than have to like manually create a whole bunch of data in your app, and it will help you have some data there rather than having to get to the point in your app where you have a create form and an update form, right? Because it's easier to start with that listing page than it is anything else. So do something like this, whether you use Faker or not, or you just put in 9 whatevers into your app manually with the same data, totally fine. If you want to use Faker to generate some fake data, do so. Either is totally fine. Right? If you want to use the DB seed file, great. If you want to go through the process of making a task, also great. They both work equally well. I will commit this, except I'm going to remove this file.
I think it would be worth it to add an image column to a table.
Why would you do that?
It seems like it'd be easier now.
What's the purpose of that image column?
So that for me, so that each profile has an image.
That has one attached image.
You just attach it.
That's what entirely Active Storage is trying to solve. Right? It's allowing you to attach any asset resource to any model in your system without having to go create columns and manage any of that. That is 1,000 times easier than doing it yourself. That used to be how we did it before we had Active Storage. Every model that needed an image, you had to like add a column for it. And if your model needed 2 images, like Shay has profile images and cover images, you had to have 2 columns. Now he just decided, oh, my profiles need cover images, has 1 cover image, and we're done. So that's going to end up being easier. Okay. I will commit this and push it. Any questions on the sample data stuff? Should be pretty straightforward. It's the same commands you're typing in console if you've already been creating some sample data. You just put them in a file and run them rather than having to do them in console. You also get the added benefit of you remember what data you put in. without having to go to your console to try and pull up your history to see what you generated. So use something like this to keep track of the sample data you have. And if you're using images, maybe find a placeholder site and just pull your random images from there. That'll work pretty well.
Place cage.
Yeah. I also found Placemat. I also like Phil Murray.
What's placemat?
Placemat
Oh,
has a couple of different kinds of images. Like you can do
Yeah.
dogs or people or what. So they just have different
Yeah, there's
categories.
one that's like place hold it, and you just give it the dimensions, and then it gives you back an image that just says the dimensions.
Yes. Yeah.
Convenient.
Yeah. This allows you to have like overlay colors and text and stuff on it, which is pretty handy. Yeah. I just found it because I was looking for something that had a good randomness to it and like a couple different categories.
Yeah, especially ones that actually give you a random image when you ask for the same size rather than the same image 4 times.
Yes. This is another thing that I think Suncoast could build.
I agree.
Yeah. Maybe we suggest it as a sample final project for somebody next time. That'd be cool.
Too late for us.
Too late for you.
These are the kind of things that scratches I end up like taking care
Like
of.
making a Earl shortener.
Yeah,